Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. Now, our Insider Insight Show we normally release on a Thursday. Because of the importance as it relates to the content, the importance of my guest, and the time sensitivity of the information we're going to present today, we are releasing this early. And then I know you, the subscribers, are going to say, look, this is information the public needs to get right away. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it and we're going to put it on YouTube for public consumption. I am honored to have back with me someone who I consider a very dear friend. Now, there are many people you come in contact with in life. And everyone has an effect on whenever you meet someone, obviously. But there are very few people that you come in contact with in your life who have a profound influence on your life and how you view life in general. And that is my friend Charles Woods. He has had an enormous positive impact upon my life because of who he is and what he has taught me. Now, folks that look at Charles saying, well, you're an accomplished individual. You're a well-known attorney. You are a administrative law judge, retired. You are a husband, a father, a community leader, an activist, not just politically,
Dave,
but in the community.
I am just an ordinary person.
Well, and you know what?
Seriously, it's humility.
Yes.
Humility.
And,
you know that, Dave.
And you are exactly that, Charles. And you are also a father of Ty Woods. And many of our listeners are familiar who Ty is. There were 4 individuals who lost their lives in Benghazi: Ty Woods, Glenn Doherty, Sean Smith, and Ambassador Chris Stevens. And we've spoken, Charles and I have done a number of interviews. And those of you that aren't familiar with Ty's background, Ty was a CIA contract protective officer who lost his life in the service of his country while trying to protect a CIA facility in Benghazi, Libya, early in the morning of September 12th, 2012. He was killed alongside his friend and fellow officer, Glenn Doherty. Charles and I did our first interview in January 2019, and it received a tremendous amount of feedback. I was contacted by hundreds of people who were moved by Charles in his story, in his presentation. Excuse me. And one of the people who contacted me, by the name of Nick No, he was in the field of operations, September 12th, 2012. And we did a follow-up interview with Charles and Nick in March of 2019. And then some other folks came forward, other whistleblowers. And I did a follow-up interview with Nick and a fellow by the name, another patriot, incredibly courageous, Josh Salmon, who was in the field of operations that night, who spoke about what happened. And then Charles and I did a follow-up interview in February of 2020, earlier this year. The reason why Charles and I are here today is I want to go through a timeline of events. But before I get to the timeline of events, I mentioned the impact Charles has had on my life. Charles, I thought I knew about forgiveness until I met Charles. And Charles gave me a perspective, a working model, insight into a level of forgiveness that I had never touched before. So Charles, before we speak about the timeline in Benghazi and some other issues that have developed, speak to us about your greatest lesson to me about forgiveness.
Okay, thank you. I hope this has had a positive impact on a lot of people, the death of my son. It's had a positive impact on me. When you lose a son, you're in shock for a while. But the way I approached this was I realized that not one sparrow falls to the ground outside of God's will, and that it was Ty's time to go home. And I know where he's at, and it's just a 30-year interruption in our relationship. And one of these days I want to see Ty. And in order to do that, I have to forgive everyone. Look at the Lord's Prayer. It says, forgive us our sins as we forgive those that sin against us. And then right after the amen, the next sentence is, if you do not forgive others, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you. So I had to forgive. So from the very beginning, I never had any animosity towards the people in Washington, D.C., or overseas that were responsible for my son's death. None whatsoever. Never felt bitterness. In fact, one of these days I want to see Ty, and when I do, I want him to say, Dad, I'm proud of you. You did what I would have done. Now, people have come to me and said, oh, the people responsible, they should rot in hell and all that sort of stuff. And I said, no, I would love to see those people in heaven one of these days. You know, obviously they'd have to, the word would be repent, but basically change the direction of their lives. And quite frankly, I would want to be the first person up there to give them a hug and say, hey, I'm so glad you finally made it. Because we all make mistakes and we all learn from our lives, okay? So anyway, I've got a lot of static about forgiveness. People say, oh, it's people like you that forgive that never get anything done. Well, the first time we went on the Hannity program, I took two of my daughters, that'd be Ty's half-sisters and Ty's brother, so that people could see this is what the family looks like, okay? And they weren't supposed to say anything. They were just supposed to smile and be there. And right in the middle of the program, Sean, he threw us a curveball. And he said, you know, I have two kids, and if someone killed one of my children, I don't think I could forgive like your dad. Then he asked my youngest daughter, we're talking 7th grade, totally unprepared, how do you feel about your dad's stance on forgiveness? Now, my wife, she's an intercessor, and she was back home in Hawaii praying that God would put the right words in everyone's mouth. And so I was worried, but anyway, she smiles, this beautiful smile, and she says, well, Jesus was pretty good at forgiving people. And I thought, oh, great answer. And then asked my other daughter the same question, and she just radiated the love of Jesus and said, and we're supposed to be like Jesus. Now, I always wondered, I know Romans 8:28 says all things work towards God, if you just love God, you know. And I knew some good was going to come out of this. And I thought, okay, maybe that's the whole purpose of this happening. Maybe of those several million people that are watching, maybe that would cause them to have a genuine relationship with God, which is the best thing that could ever happen to them. And, but I never knew. Well, 2 years ago, I was at a New Year's Eve party, and there was this lady who knew more about Benghazi than practically anyone I talked to. And her husband, who was a very wealthy businessman, had just passed away that last year. In fact, actually, they had a 2,000-acre horse ranch where they didn't raise saddle horses. They raised racing thoroughbreds, okay? And since he was a businessman, he never trusted anyone until there was a show me moment. Well, after the program, he turned to his wife and he says, you know, well, he'd gone to church, but he wasn't necessarily really a genuine Christian. And he said to his wife, he says, now I believe that was the show me moment. So as a result of Ty's death and what my daughter said, something good happened. And then she said, because of that, my husband died 6 months ago, and he's in heaven now. So I knew spiritually some good things were going to happen as a result of Ty's death. And, you know, you got God, family, and country. Those three things, that's what makes us great. And that's what the progressives want to destroy. They want to destroy God. They want to get people to believe that there isn't one, which is totally false. They want to destroy the family, and they want to destroy our country. And I knew some good things would happen as far as our country was concerned, but I didn't know what they were. Okay, usually when you have a cover-up passage of time, people forget after a while. Okay, well, after 4 years, people didn't forget. What started off as a snowball up here ended up being an avalanche right before the last presidential election. because of the death of my son and the others in Benghazi. That led to the crooked Hillary. That led to the Benghazi emails. That led to the FBI investigation right before the election. And that was enough to push it over the edge and protect us from basically a socialist totalitarian government. And I totally respect people on the Democrat side that that's what they want. They want socialism, which, that's fine if that's what they want. But it protected us from that. And so some good things as far as our country happened as well.
Over the years, Charles, you have done tremendous research, surgical dissection of this event in Benghazi. Educate our listeners on what you've learned over the past 8 years and what occurred that night. Because in many people's minds, to this day, they have a fog. There's so much smoke and mirrors over what happened that night, over what government officials told us, that it was about a video and the like. Educate our listeners, Charles, as only you can do, about what you have found in your research and your dissection of what occurred that night, which is to this day impacts our country on a daily basis.
Okay. Well, when this happened, my concern was this. Why was there no rescue? Obviously, if there'd been even a half-hearted rescue, my son would still be alive, Ambassador Stevens would still be alive, and the others would still be alive. So I wanted to know why, because it didn't make any sense. Here we have huge military, the most powerful one in the world, assets all over the world. Why? The battle lasted 13 hours. Why in 13 hours was there no military response? So in order to answer that question, I sent a letter to President Obama, and basically what I asked him was, if a member of your family had been present in Benghazi, would you have done things any differently? And he said, he was very gracious. He sent me a letter back. And
can you read that, Charles?
It's not right in front of me,
okay.
But off the top of my head, I can basically say the points that he made. He said, I directed my security team to do everything possible. Okay, that's one. Okay. Another thing he said was there were not military assets that could get there in time. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then he also said, if a member of my family, one of my children, was in Benghazi, I would not have done anything differently. Okay. So I looked at each one of these statements, and I didn't know anything, so pretty much I had to believe him. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until later that was actually on your program. What was that, about a year and a half ago? Mm-hmm. You made the statement that, hey, if there's any ex-military people out there mm-hmm. that know firsthand knowledge about why there was no rescue, please contact Mr. Woods. So as a result of that, several people did contact me. One of them happened to be Nick No. Now, there's two centers where one of the things they do is have rescue teams available 24 hours a day mm-hmm. on immediate notice to go any place in the world. Okay, one of them is in Tampa, Florida. It's CENTCOM and AFRICOM, and then there's another one that's in Ramstein, Germany. Okay, at the one in Tampa, Florida, they must have known ahead of time that there was going to be an attack, because they had this meaningless exercise going on just right at the right time. And the people that were doing that were complaining, hey, this is just an exercise. There's people that might be dying over there in Benghazi. We need to call this exercise off and do the real thing, get those rescue teams over there. And they refused to do that. So finally, after 8.5 hours, it was over with. And instead of, okay, now we're going to, buckle up and send some rescue teams, they said, oh, we're not supposed to do anything because the State Department is in charge. And then I don't know a whole lot about chain of command, except that the military does not take orders from Secretary of State Clinton. the military takes orders from the commander-in-chief, who would have been President Obama, unless President Obama says, in the matter of Benghazi military, do not obey me. Take orders from Secretary of State Clinton. So apparently there was a little collusion between that. And then he made the statement that he would have done nothing differently if it had been his child. Well, quite frankly, I'm a family man. And I could not have gone to sleep that night knowing that my children, or the children of someone that I was supposed to be protecting, was going to die when I was in the Situation Room watching that drone, knowing that they were going to be killed. I would have done something. What I probably would have done was those unarmed drones that litter the sky above northern Africa. They're technically, some of them are supposed to be unarmed, but what I've heard is they're all armed with Hellfire missiles. Now, a Hellfire missile can hit a 3-foot target. I mean, if one of my family members were there, or even someone else's family members were there, I would have immediately said, hey, one of those Hellfire missiles up above right now, Hellfire missile right in the front yard of the ambassador's complex, and guess what would have happened? All those video protesters would have been running for their lives.
That's right. They would have scattered. Yeah. They would have scattered.
Oh, immediately. That would have saved everyone's life. And another thing I could have done, I couldn't have gone upstairs and had a peaceful night's sleep, so I'd get all rested up so I could go collect money from Las Vegas the next morning. I couldn't go to sleep. It physically, mentally, it would be impossible as a family man to do that. But for some reason or another, he could. So that, kind of blew a hole in that story. Okay, and then Nick, he was the other one that was there. He was in Ramstein, Germany. And I guess this video has gone viral, which is fantastic because people need to know what the truth is. Because we got an election in 3 weeks, okay? And in order for people to vote intelligently, they have to know what the real truth is. And unfortunately, with the fake media and the cover-up, most people don't know what the truth is. And I wouldn't have known what the truth was if I hadn't been digging.
And the information Nick No came forward with, and his colleague Josh Salmon. And by the way, it's interesting, Charles, when we did that interview, I posted it on YouTube. And Charles, it was up for several months, and then it got taken down, and I was notified by YouTube that it was taken down because of a copyright strike. Charles, I found that to be quite interesting because we had no video footage, no still footage, no audio recordings in the video itself. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is my own production, my own interview. How could there be a copyright strike? Well, it took us a while to find out, but we were told and I won't mention the name of the movie because I don't want to go there again. We mentioned the name of the movie that was based on what happened in Benghazi. We just mentioned the name. No audio clip, no video clip, no still clip, we didn't even say the movie was good or bad. We just said the name of the movie. And because we said the name of the movie, they said that was a copyright strike and they took it down. So what I did, Charles, is I took that interview now, and it's on the homepage, right in red, on the homepage of DaveJanny.com, right at the top. So we're not putting it back on YouTube because I'm not going to go through that goat rodeo again, but we have it right there. But in that interview, we speak to Nick and Josh Salmon, and they point out, Charles, that there was, and tell me if I'm wrong in my interpretation of the information they presented, that there was in fact a stand down.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, first of all, the reason because of that, as you know, the media, big Hollywood, big money, they want to control everything, okay? And so part of their control is Silicon Valley, part of their control is all these news networks, the newspapers, and they want to control. Unfortunately, Trump is not part of their club, and so they want to get rid of him, and the way they get rid of him is they control what information goes out. So that movie, which I will say was called Umpteen Hours, that that's ridiculous. But it was probably the people in Silicon Valley that obviously are not on Trump's side that want to get rid of him. And quite frankly, he's done so much for our country. I mean, everyone knows the economy before this phony. Everyone knew that the people in power were going to crash the economy right before the election, to get him out of power. And, blind man can see that that's exactly what happened. Anyway, so what happened with Nick, he was in Ramstein, Germany, and he was told immediately, do not rescue. Okay, that's totally contrary to that letter that President Obama said. Mm-hmm. Now, those are the facts. I'm not going to draw the conclusions for people, but they can draw their own conclusions as to who was telling the truth.
Now, Charles, many people ask, well, wait a minute, why was there a standout? In other words, why did the administration want people dead in Benghazi? What do you say to those listeners that ask that question?
Yeah, he made the statement, I directed my security team to do everything possible. Well, the assumption was everything possible to save lives, but actually he directed his security team to do everything possible to make sure that dead men don't talk, because they were doing things that they should not have been doing there. One of the things was that Hillary Clinton, and this has been established by the arms dealer who's done interviews, Mark Turry, Hillary Clinton illegally, against the wishes of Congress, sent all kinds of weapons to terrorists in Benghazi. Now, Libya is basically two different parts. The part where Benghazi is, it's tribal, basically. It's gone back hundreds of years. They hate the people in Tripoli. That would be Gaddafi, okay? And so they're the terrorist. Gaddafi is anti-terrorist. He was trying to get rid of all these terrorist organizations in Libya. He was our ally, okay? And so Hillary sent all these illegal arms to the terrorists in Benghazi, in that half of the country. Those terrorists, who some of them had been killing Americans in Afghanistan, prior to this, were used to get rid of our ally, Gaddafi. And then after that, there was total chaos. A lot of those weapons, including ones that could shoot down airplanes, heat-seeking missiles that are shoulder-fired, a lot of those ended up over in Afghanistan. In fact, actually, there was a helicopter that was shot down. The thing didn't explode. The serial numbers were traced right back to those illegal arms that had been shipped to Benghazi by Hillary. And then our government realized we have a problem. So we need to gather up all of those weapons, including the heat-seeking missiles that can shoot down a helicopter or a jetliner. And so that's what they were doing. They were gathering those together. And the Turkish ambassador was the last person he talked to. There was a Turkish boat. This has been established, that was loaded with arms. Those arms went to Turkey. From there, they went to to Syria. They went to ISIS, who a lot of people think actually was supported by the government, because we could have wiped them out. And they ended up with our arms, and then a lot of those arms ended up over in Afghanistan. Like Blackbeard the pirate said, dead men don't talk. So that would be, and now we have some information. We have information from Mark Turry. Now, the facts that we presented in that video, I wanted to have two layers of proof, The things that Nick Noe, Nick Noe said about, we had assets that were available, but we were told to not rescue. Mm-hmm. The fact of what happened in Tampa, where we had assets available, but we had this meaningless exercise that they refused to cancel to use. That was confirmed by General Ham. We wanted to have different levels in that video of proof of what was saying, so that people didn't think this was just a conspiracy theory. These are facts. So I presented on that what the head of AFRICOM, General Ham, 4-star general, immediately afterwards, Jason Chaffetz, who is I consider a personal friend and a person of impeccable integrity, a congressman. He immediately was concerned and went over to Libya with General Ham. And on Fox News, publicly as well as to me, made this statement. Several occasions, General Ham told me I had assets immediately available in the area, but I was not authorized to use those military assets. Several times he said that on Fox News. Several times he said that to me. Okay. Now, I could hardly wait to watch the interrogation by the Intelligence Committee of General Ham. Finally, when he did testify, you could tell that he'd been compromised because Jason Chaffetz said, General Ham, this is to his face during the hearings, he said, General Ham, I've talked to you on 3 different occasions, and on 3 different occasions you have given me 3 different stories. This is not the way that our government should work. The government should tell us the truth because eventually they work for us. That's why we vote. And we shouldn't be voting for people that don't tell us the truth. Of the falconer, that would be the individual that worked with the royal families for 20 years. I guess the big sport of royalty and terrorist organizers, they're sometimes the same thing, would get together at these falcon camps that he ran for 20 years. I mean, falcons, some of them cost $1 million. Okay, so it's the high-ranking people he was rubbing shoulders with, terrorists as well as royalty. And, he made those statements about what happened with bin Laden, and basically that the U.S. government, he even mentioned the name of a person that had a weapon aimed at bin Laden at about 100 yards distance or so, and was prevented from firing. And then after, that was at Tora Bora, after Tora Bora, the U.S. government took bin Laden to northern Iran, even mentioned the name, and he was there along with over 100 Al-Qaeda leaders and their families for 10 years. So the U.S. government had made a deal, don't hit us and we'll protect your lives here. Finally, the Iranian government got tired of him, wanted to get rid of him. So he was transferred in August of 2010 to Pakistan. And there in Pakistan, it wasn't a compound where he was hiding. It was actually basically, in his words, a prison or a gilded cage where the bird was waiting his fate, which was a trophy kill. The day I knew there was something wrong with the supposed killing of bin Laden, just didn't smell right. Was an administrative law judge, and for 6 years, that was my job, is basically to tell who's telling the truth and who isn't telling the truth. That was what you have to do a couple thousand times a year. And that's why, like when Hillary told me it was the video, I mean, I could tell that she wasn't, saying the truth. But I thought that, well, politicians, they just lie. So it's no big deal. I didn't realize it was as big of a bombshell as it was. But anyway, so I needed to have some proof to prove that what Alan the falconer was saying was true. And what happened was immediately after this, for about a month, you're in shock and about losing your son. And so my wife and I were walking down the beach, and we had a little bumper sticker on the back of our car about Ty. And we hadn't gone too far. And this gentleman, he was a ranger, and I'm not supposed to give his name, and I never have given his name. Unfortunately, the government listens to all my phone conversations, so the government knows his name, and I do fear for his safety. He came up and said, how do you know Chief Petty Officer Woods? And I says, well, Ty's my son. And he said, well, I worked with your son. And it was part of my healing process, because Special Forces people, they're all alpha males, and it was almost like being with my son. They talked about hot cars. He had a really hot car. Ty had an SVTR Mustang, only 500 of these racing machines were made, took 4 catalytic converters to make it legal so it could go 170 miles an hour on the freeway. They both liked hot cars. And we became very good friends. He started coming to our church. His girlfriend started surfing with my daughters. They ended up getting married. And one of the things that he mentioned was that he was in that village with the Rangers. And he said we were, the government, this is to prove that these people are true that they gave this testimony. He says the government story was that we had requested help and that we needed to have this immediate help or we'd all be killed. And so they sent this team over. Okay. Well, what happened was instead of sending a fast helicopter and sending Rangers, and this is something that he says, when Rangers need help, they do not send Rangers. And they don't send SEALs. They only send Rangers. Mm-hmm. And so that was funny. Plus, they sent them on a super fast helicopter. Well, in this case, they loaded up, 22, 24 members of the SEAL Team 6. There are a couple that didn't get on there. Plus, there were some Afghanistan soldiers who are basically, you can't trust them because they really aren't on our side. There were half a dozen of them that were listed that were supposed to get on there. They refused to get on there because they knew what was going on. They knew it was a setup. And so they slowly went on this antiquated helicopter that was the size of a school bus, a Chinook. And slowly they got to where it was. Now, usually, he said, when a helicopter comes in, zip right down to the ground, opens up, troops go out immediately, and then the helicopter takes off, gets out of there. Well, in this case, I said it was they hot roped or fast roped down, and I've never heard that term before, and what it means is that individually, while it's up in the air, hovering as a sitting duck target, they individually go down. And what happened was that they were shot at, and then the helicopter crashed. Okay, I wanted to do that, present that information, basically to confirm what the witnesses at that video that was taken last Sunday that went viral, that they were telling the truth. So I had that second level of truth. Now, I need to regress a little bit because immediately after this, I hadn't talked to this individual for a while. And so I called him up the night right after that, and I told him, I says, hey, it looks like this thing's gone viral. And
this is this past week.
Yeah, we're talking night before last.
Yeah.
And so I called him up and just wanted to confirm that what I said on the video was true, and he'd made kind of just a general statement at that time. And I made some notes while I was talking to him. And can I read those? Because I was slightly wrong. I was slightly wrong in what I said. Okay, and I have this October 12, 2020 at approximately 10 p.m. I talked to this individual, and he talked about the CAS, which is the Close Air Support. I'm just reading my notes right there. And he said, we did not need help. That confirms what I said in the video. And they did not request help. In fact, actually, if they'd sent someone in there, it would have messed things up and actually put them in jeopardy. He said, if Rangers are in trouble, they send Rangers, unless the quote-unquote stuff really hits the fan. And then he said the SEALs were lost. And he said there were only 2 guys that actually watched it. He wasn't. There was a slight firefight that was going on at that time, but they were in charge of it. They weren't going to get wiped out or anything. And he says, so I was watching that. I actually wasn't watching it. I heard the weapons go off that were aimed towards the helicopter. And he says, I don't know if it was RPG or if it was one of those heat-seeking missiles that had been, illegally sent over there that they'd got their hands on. And he says, I did not watch it getting hit, but I heard it take off. And whether it was actually hit or it turned violently in an evasive maneuver could have been either one of those things that took it down. Okay. Now, you've heard the video of Charles Strange, who was the father of one of the SEALs who was killed there. And he was given this information originally that it burst into flames and the bodies were burnt beyond recognition. That was a lie by the government. Why do they have to lie to us? Every little kid, what we're taught that little deal. When first you practice to deceive, what a tangled web you weave. Okay? True. The problem is, if you lie once, you're going to have to lie 100 times afterwards to cover it up.
And then you can't keep them straight. And then you can't keep them straight.
Yeah, and then you have to have a pretty good memory because you might end up telling the truth, and then that looks really bad. So, tell us the truth, please, because the truth's going to come out eventually. Anyway, it ended up that when they did see their son's body, it wasn't burned beyond recognition. And then they sent people out there with cutting torches to cut up the helicopter. So obviously it wasn't burned up. So that didn't happen, but it did crash. And
I have that interview. I did an interview with Charles Strange on the radio show. And I have that on our homepage in the red box, right next to the box with Nick and Josh Salmon about Benghazi. I have the Charles Strange interview.
Yeah,
too,
well, this
if people want
information,
more information.
Came out on that video that was released Sunday that went viral.
So Charles,
I'm just saying this to prove that those facts are facts.
So
that's not a conspiracy theory.
So Charles, when that video came out that you did with Nick No with Alan Harrow Perot, the falconer,
right?
I watched it, and I'll give you a couple of my impressions, if you don't mind. One is I had heard about Alan Harrow Perot before. He's commonly termed amongst the contacts I have in the military and the intelligence agencies as the Birdman.
Yes.
Birdman.
Affectionately said that. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't mean that derogatorily. They mean it right.
Yeah.
Now, when you watch the video, you see, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, but there are some people that watch that video and they see your appearance and they see Nick's appearance, and then they look at Alan Harrow Parrott's appearance, and he is a Sikh, so he has a headdress on, and he has a full beard, and he has a clothing consistent with the Sikh practice. The Sikh practice. Well, many people are making fun of him about his appearance. Now, we have to set that aside. I mean, to me, that's superficial BS. We have to listen to the content of what's coming forward. So what I did, Charles, one of the, as I said in my introduction, I consider you a friend.
Right. And we are friends.
And I thought, I'm looking here, and is this guy is this fella, Alan Harrow Perot, is he legit? Is he legit? Because I'd hate to see Charles and Nick, who are patriots, get involved in something that some people might think is not factually based. So what I did, Charles, is I contacted a number of people I knew and know in the military, and some people in the intelligence world about Alan Harrow Perot. And you mentioned he is a falconer. Well, he is. This is what was described. Here is what this has been the consistent description of this guy. He's extremely smart. Some people even termed him brilliant.
Exactly.
People have described him as being a bit eccentric. They also said that to say that this guy is just a falconer is an understatement. He is the falconer's falconer. They describe him, he was described to me as the Babe Ruth of falconry.
That's why he had access to the royalty.
That's exactly, and that's what they said. They said the reason why Alan Harold Perot had access to royalty and to this entire circle of government officials, of terror leaders, is because falconry is such a huge thing, is such a huge topic, such a huge entity in the Middle East. And this guy is the legend. This guy got access and has had access for many years to a lot of people.
Right.
Okay. Now, that being said, so his access, and not one of them said, well, we think he's lying when he says he has access to these people. Not one of them. Not one of them across the board. Okay? Now, just like you as a judge, you have to assess a witness. Okay? Now, when you had contact with him, Alan Harold Perot, put your judge's robe on and your decades of experience in the law, what was your impression of him when you put your judge's robe on, looking at him as a witness coming into your courtroom?
Okay. Based upon 6 years' experience, being an administrative law judge on probably thousands of cases, my job was who's telling the truth and who isn't. No question in my mind, 100% credible. Plus, there's two generals that I personally know, and both of them have said he's 100% legitimate.
Okay. So then I got, you mentioned Nick No. And you know Nick, and I know Nick through, right. and I heard from Nick, and I said, well, this is very interesting, but I don't want to see Charles or you disparaged if the information that Alan Harold Perot is coming out with is incorrect or can't be backed up, because I believe if that would be the case, that would harm all. That would.
He's telling the truth.
Right. But that was my concern, Charles. Okay, it was my concern. So Nick sent me a note from Alan Harold Perot that was sent, and here's what it is. Because I said there has to be evidence. Because there have been when you mentioned that. Alan speaks about the fact that bin Laden was shuttled into Iran with the help of our government, was kept in safe houses there with the knowledge of our government.
CBS had a program on that they decided at the last minute not to.
And there are folks right now that are saying, well, wait a minute, that's interesting this is coming out now. But, for example, a former congressman, Kirk Weldon, wrote a book, 2005, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, where he spoke about this. Got in a lot of trouble, by the way. Probably lost his election because he spoke about this. Yeah. And there was another journalist that spent, I think, about a decade on this, Michael Moore. He has the website True Pundit. He, I believe, wrote a book a couple years ago on this particular issue and actually did a huge amount of work. In fact, I think, if I remember correctly, he made so many enemies of bringing this topic up. Oh, yeah. I think they had the FBI kicking in his door and stuff. I mean, which is usually a prime example of somebody who's onto something that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's been established that the U.S. government knew that bin Laden was in Afghanistan, or not in Afghanistan.
In Iran.
Okay, that's been established. Right. Now, the thing is that's so important to me as far as the blood of innocent Americans, the pretext that the Obama-Biden administration used for sacrificing several thousand American lives in Afghanistan unnecessarily was, we are sending troops into Afghanistan because they're harboring Osama bin Laden.
Right. And it wasn't just Obama. That was before. That was George W. too.
Well, yeah. But it was continued
with Obama.
With Obama.
That's right.
Obama knew. Okay.
That's right.
That's what really bothers me. This is pure evil.
Oh, absolutely.
These are men that are honorable, that are willing to jeopardize their lives and their families to protect the leaders of our country. Our leaders need to protect those people that are out there protecting the leaders themselves. Okay? That's why we don't leave anyone behind. That's why we always rescue. Okay? And the thing is, those troops, the reason that they gave for those troops being in Afghanistan was a lie.
It was.
It's not only cost our economy trillions of dollars. That can be replaced.
Yeah,
okay?
true.
Okay, but it cost the lives of several thousand Americans that didn't need to be there. Okay, and those
for many years,
and we're not even speaking of the many more thousands that came back,
harmed,
with their
injured.
bodies and their minds injured forever because of that. Like I say, it goes beyond being bad. It's evil.
It's evil. So Nick sent me this note.
I don't want vindictiveness. Okay.
No.
But I do want to protect our country.
Yes, I do too.
We can't have those same people in power that would do something like this to thousands of people based upon a lie that they were perpetrating that they knew was false
for many years. So I pushed Nick on the evidence. So this is a letter from Alan Harold Perot to Nick. Here is the document for public media disclosures with audio recordings, URL hot links. Please distribute at your discretion. Okay. So, and it's best shared through, and there's a number of documents and there's some transcripts of some phone calls. Now I want to read one and your take, okay, as we go through this one transcript of a phone call. And this is a phone call between Alan Harold Perot and Congressman Kirk Weldon and an attorney by the name of Brian Ettinger, who is essentially an attorney that has ties to Joe Biden.
No, not just ties. He's described as being Joe Biden's best friend.
Okay, so there you go. So, and there are a number of documents in this that have been distributed to many people. But this is one, and there's also, in addition to the transcript, there is the actual recording. Now, I talked to a number of people about, okay, what's the best way to present this?
I've listened to this recording.
And you've listened to the recording. I've listened to the recording. Many other people have listened to recordings. I've had actually some people who are very good at acoustic analysis listen to the recording. They believe it's legitimate. It's not.
They can do voice prints.
It's not. They believe it's not edited. It's not fooled with. That kind of thing. But it was felt that for presentation purposes that I read the transcript, get your impression, my impression, if you will, of what was said. Because this is really important, because this is some of the evidence. Because many people are saying, well, interesting this is coming out now, but there's no evidence. Well, it appears that Alan is producing evidence, and it's going to be stepped out here in a very quick fashion of this evidence. The first evidence that's being presented, and that's why I want to really focus on this, is Osama bin Laden. Now, here we are. Remember, it was said, Barack Obama said, that SEAL Team 6, well, actually, it was Joe Biden who said this, and Leon Panetta. They were the ones who came out and said, SEAL Team 6 and went in and they killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan. And that was, I believe, May 2nd, 2011. May 2nd, 2011. This is a phone call conversation between Alan Harold Perot, Congressman Kirk Weldon, and Brian Ettinger. And Weldon and Ettinger are in a car. They're on a speakerphone. This is Weldon now, speaking to Alan. Quote, I told you who Brian is, Brian Ettinger. He's a good friend and trusted partner of mine. He has access. He doesn't get paid. He does this as a favor for Biden with the interagency organized crime task force that works with our agencies. He's also very close to Biden on a number of issues. He was his former staffer. I trust him with my life and we're business partners. I've told him about you, Alan Harrow Perot, but I want you to tell him the most recent situation, and then Brian and I are going to talk about it, end quote. Now Ettinger speaks. This is the attorney that's linked to Biden. This is Ettinger. Quote, Kurt Weldon, the congressman, told me about, I guess, the latest incident with you and Governor Richardson, and he went through your background and who you are and the people you previously contacted, and he indicated that you were going to try to get Senator Susan Collins and Senator Lieberman united together to go in and see the president to brief President Obama or the Vice President Biden about this situation, end quote. This situation being bin Laden. Okay. Ettinger again. Quote, I'm sure you do know most of the royal members of the royal families because that's what they hunt with is falcons, as well as bin Laden. Used to hunt with falcons, and then he corrects himself, well, he still does, end quote. He still does.
His double, exactly.
Okay, he still does. Okay. Then Perot jumps in. Quote, yes, falconry is the Rosetta Stone for Al-Qaeda. I met Victor Bout in Shizad's falconry camps, and recently between November 2004 and up until recently, my team members have met Osama bin Laden 6 times within Iran. Or inside Iran. We have repeatedly notified the U.S. government and only received first we were ignored, then we were obstructed, and then we were threatened, end quote. Ettinger then jumps in, the attorney, quote, yeah, I mean that doesn't surprise me. There's a friend of mine who's an international hunter, and he hunts with falcons with the royal family of the UAE, and his name is Said Khan Karacha. And I don't know if you know Said, but he takes them in the Himalayas to go to this mountain and they go hunting with the royal family there. And he told me about a year ago, so that would be 2010, that because he has a house also in Quetta, he told me that he knew recently that bin Laden was in northern Iran and he's an American citizen, and he told people at the embassy, this guy did, and they ignored him and treated him like the plague, end quote. Okay. Then Weldon jumps in. Alan, I haven't told you this, but on my most recent trip to Kuwait, I was with my 2 closest friends there, Sheikh Mohammed, who's the foreign minister, deputy prime minister, and foreign U.S. ambassador, and Sheikh Saad, who was the ambassador during Desert Storm, who was George Bush, the father's closest friend in the Middle East. Look out there. He's very close friend of mine, and we were having a private dinner with his son Noah, who's another really close friend of mine, and we got talking about bin Laden, and I said, Sheikh Saad, where do you think he is? He said, quote, oh, Kurt, he said, there's, quote, no doubt he's in Iran, end quote. Then Ettinger jumps in. Yeah, I just told Kirk, and I say now, the better way of doing it is if Susan Collins and Lieberman are on board, I wouldn't go see Obama, I'd go see Biden, end quote. Oh, I go see Biden, okay. Weldon again, quote, and Brian can arrange that. Brian can arrange that directly, Alan, end quote. And then Alan Perot states, quote, here's the problem, sir. We have identified with documentation 3 mechanisms used by the Bush administration to covertly engineer bin Laden's house arrest, which inside Iran, which reportedly was arranged by John Brennan. We have identified 2 mechanisms used by this administration, Obama, to continue the legacy. And Hillary Clinton's fingerprints are all over this, and Leon Panetta's fingerprints are all over this. We will have tremendous opposition, end quote. And then Ettinger, the attorney, jumps in and says, quote, well, yeah, because I told Kurt today, I said he is being protected by us, the he being bin Laden. Mm-hmm. We don't really want to get him. We want him under the radar screen because he basically made a deal that he's not going to hit us here in the United States, end quote. So reportedly,
that confirms everything that Alan said
Okay. And when you listen to the recording and you read the transcript, it corresponds.
Right.
The transcript's not. I mean, the transcript is not changed from the recording when you listen to it. Now this is the evidence. This is the evidence. Now this is the evidence that's been presented so far by Alan Harrow Perot as it relates to this Osama bin Laden being brought to Iran with our government's assistance, being kept there. Okay, when as you said, we had thousands of our personnel in Afghanistan in harm's way,
American soldiers killed
looking for this guy for years. When
their blood is on the hands of the people that lied to us.
Now, there's also in this information that was sent, I want to be full circle on this. There is a letter from this attorney, Ettinger, to Perot. Reportedly, Alan Perot delivered some discs to him with information to bring to Biden. And this is the letter that is sent, that was in this documents that Alan Perot had forwarded to people for distribution, to Nick and to everybody else. And this is the letter from Ettinger to Alan Perot. Dear Mr. Perot, enclosed is the information you sent to me, including the discs, which are unopened. I told you months ago that I could not help you nor wanted to be involved in your project. I never told you I would forward your information to anyone in the White House, including the vice president, so I'm returning your information. Well, Charles, that contradicts that phone conversation. Okay, I'll go on. Please delete any reference of my name or involvement with you or your project, as you do not have my permission to use my name or false and misleading statements you stated in your documents. Okay? If you do not cease your actions, then I will proceed with legal recourse against you and your company. I spoke with you as a favor to my friend, former Congressman Kirk Weldon, but never did agree to take you on as a client. Very truly, Brian Ettinger. And it was on his office letterhead from Houston, Texas. So here's where I stand on this, Charles, and you might disagree. The proof is in the evidence. And so far, there has been evidence produced by Alan Harrow Perot about bin Laden, about his placement
by several other forces. Yes.
Right. And on these other issues, whether it's about the double being brought to Abbottabad, Pakistan, where where there was an event that occurred, and whether that person was a double, and whether that double was removed, or whether the real guy was sent there and then the real bin Laden was brought back to all that. Now, Alan Harrow Perot states he has evidence on many fronts. That has not been released. The only evidence that I have seen to date, to be transparent, is, and in fact, there are people on Twitter, including Nick No and a number of other people that have, and the reason why I felt comfortable to read the transcript is because they have produced that transcript on social media for people to see as well.
Right.
And since that transcript was presented yesterday on social media, I have not seen Alan Perot come forward and say, I never sent that. I have not. All I know is this note that was sent from Alan Harrow Perot to Nick was sent on Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. And this information you had already put out on the interview that you and Nick did with Alan Harrow Perot on Sunday, October 11th. So I am not aware of Alan Harrow Perot saying, I didn't release this. I mean, this is a letter. This is an email from him stating, here is the document for public media disclosures with full audio recordings, URL hot links. Please distribute at your discretion. He sent that to Nick No, and Nick has done that to many people, sent that to many people to distribute it for folks to review it. And it should be noted again, Charles, that Congressman Kirk Weldon wrote a book in 2005 talking about this, and I believe he lost his election, I believe it was in 2006. And he also had a visit from the FBI where they kicked his doors down, and that's when Mueller was in charge of the FBI, right after he came out with this book, or maybe even before. And the other person who's really put their life on the line in this thing is this Michael Moore, who I don't know, but I've seen some of his work and through True Pundit, and he was on this and years ago, and I know he got his doors kicked in. I remember this, and really put under the under the thumb for presenting this information. So where I stand on this, Charles, is Alan Perot, it's been described, has a treasure trove of information. Mm-hmm. And it's information that he has obtained based on his contacts in the Middle East through his expertise in falconry and his being able to access royal families, government officials, terrorist networks, because they all want to be associated with the Babe Ruth of falconry.
That's right.
And it's my understanding, and tell me if you have any different understanding, that he has this huge amounts of information that he is going to be releasing in short order as it relates to the information that you and Nick spoke with him about in that interview that was released on Sunday, October 11th in Florida at the AmpFest conference.
That's right. He says he has terabytes of information, and I totally believe that. Unfortunately, we're 3 weeks away from the election, and that needs to go out uncensored to the entire voting public so that they can vote intelligently 3 weeks from now.
Now, Charles, I want to address this, and I'm not trying to be mean, okay? What do you say to the people that say that Alan Harrow Perot, this is all conspiracy theory, and that this is a means of trying to discredit a patriot such as Charles Woods, who's been very upfront about what really happened in Benghazi, and by tarring Charles with this kind of information is a way to discredit Charles? I want you to address that, Charles, because as a friend, there are people I know that are saying this or that will say this, and I want you to respond to just quench that fire.
Okay. First of all, I've never been discredited, and that's not accurate. You can tell. Actually, what I would like to say to the people, and I bear some responsibility for this, and that is please, please, please pray for the safety of the Army Ranger that befriended our family, mm-hmm. that has this personal knowledge about he was in the village when the phony, basically, kill of SEAL Team 6 occurred. That's a major, major event. Like Alan Perot said, the blood of SEAL Team 6 is on the hands of Vice President Biden. Pray for his safety. I have never given out publicly the name of this individual, but unfortunately, the government listens in on all of our phone calls, and the government knows who he is and where he is. Pray for his safety. Now, as far as myself is concerned, my wife called me up from Hawaii. I'm in Oregon right now. And this is at 3:41 in the morning. And she says, I've read all these comments about that video that went viral. And so many of these comments says, pray for your husband's or my safety as well as the safety of Nick Noe and a vow on, because everyone knows that people who have bad information commit suicide or have accidents happen to them. And I, quite frankly, that's why I wanted to do that video. I didn't leave my room for very often for 5 days, because my life insurance policy was doing that video. Then after the facts are concerned, if something, they do happen to me, hey, the worst thing you can do to me is the best thing that you can do to me, because I'm going to heaven. Okay, so that's out of the picture. But if you do something to me, that's just an exclamation point on the truth of the message that's been presented. And so please, please pray for all of us, but especially for the ranger who has not become public yet.
And the families of the SEAL Team 6 members, because as you know, Charles, a number of them have come forward against tremendous pressure of not coming forward about their questions and what they have dissected and found that happened to their sons in
Right.
that horrible event. Yeah, Charles, I want to end our interview with this. When they brought, this is very instructive, and I know it's very painful, but you've spoken about this before, and I want to speak about it again. When they brought Ty back and the other 3 victims that died in Benghazi, you met Ty's body, and President, if I remember correctly, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, Leon Panetta, and Joe Biden were there in that hangar as well.
Yes.
I want you to let's go one by one. Your interactions with each one and your read of each one. Let's start with Obama.
Okay. Obama, he came up, and, of course, he had his security people on both hands. And I wanted to be very respectful to him. Mm-hmm. He shook my hand and in a very weak voice kind of whimpered, "I'm sorry." And he could not look me in the eye. He looked me over the shoulder. And, I could tell he was very uncomfortable. And he did not have that wow factor that a lot of very important people that I've met have. It really surprised me. I said, I tried to be conciliatory with him, and that was pretty much it. Okay.
What was what was your read of him?
He couldn't look me in the eye, and when he said "I'm sorry" and whimpered it, I could tell he was not sorry one bit.
Okay.
And obviously, he was in on making sure that everyone in Benghazi, dead men don't talk.
Now let's talk about Hillary.
He was not sorry one bit, because he could have sent rescue teams. Okay, and let's do this. In 13 hours, when he was president, he could not do anything to rescue. Let's fast forward to 10 months ago. Okay, that would have been December 31st. Not the embassy in Benghazi, but the embassy in Baghdad, which was overrun by terrorists 10 months ago.
Yes.
Different president. Okay.
Different end.
Same thing happened. Bulletproof glass was broken. Fires were started. The embassy staff cowered in a safe room, just like they did in Benghazi. But the difference was, in less than 1 hour, military boots were on the ground. Air Force power was above, and the terrorists were running for their lives. In 13 hours, nothing was done. In less than 1 hour at a different embassy, it was taken care of. What was the difference? One man, President Donald Trump. That was the difference. Okay, so obviously that letter he sent to me where he was giving excuses for not being able to do anything in 13 hours was totally false. A different president who wanted to get things done did in less than 1 hour.
Okay, next person, Hillary Clinton.
Okay, Hillary, everyone's seen that little book. I always joke, I keep my brains in my pocket, so I have these little daily minder books, and I have a whole stack of them in a drawer going back years, and I write down what happened, and that is admissible evidence in a court of law as a contemporaneous writing. She told me, we are going to have the video person that was responsible for the death of your son arrested. Okay, that's established fact. That was written there. And okay, let me just say a few things about her. I could tell by her face. She had so many lines on her face. I would not want to be that lady. I would not want to be inside of her brain because she looked really bad and very conflicted. I would not want to be her. The other thing that I've never said this publicly, I've said this to friends, but I got to know a lot of Secret Service people who were, because they squire us around, and that sort of stuff, got to be friends with them. And these are the people that know Hillary more than anyone else because they're with her 24 hours a day. Yeah. He said, you know what we call Hillary behind her back? We call her fat legs. Okay, the people that know her best 24 hours a day, the people that are responsible for saving her lives, the most powerful woman in the world is not respected by the people that are closest to her, protecting her lives. That kind of tells you, I wouldn't want to be that lady at all. She is suffering hell on earth right now because no one respects her, even the people that are closest to her. I feel sorry for her.
Leon Panetta.
Oh, I didn't know who he was. He's this short little guy. He looked like a mafia guy in a movie. No, I mean, seriously, I had no idea who the guy was when I saw him. I found out later he was a defense guy. Actually, he might have been head of CIA.
Yeah, I think he's head of CIA, okay. And then Secretary of Defense.
Anyway, I didn't know who he was. Like I say, he looked like just a little mafia guy, but you could tell this guy had power. Okay.
Last, Joe Biden.
Okay, Joe Biden got a chance to speak with him twice. And, what happened, the four families were in different areas of this large room, and they mingled around these and talked to each one of us. Okay, Joe Biden came up to me, and he said, I'm Joe Biden. And he's the only one that had to explain who he was, which I thought was kind of interesting. And he mentioned that he'd lost a couple of family members, and I appreciated that. And then he left, and then a little while later he came back, and from quite some distance away, at least 10 feet away, in a super loud voice, almost kind of really loud, like he was in a tavern or something, he made this statement. He says, and this was totally disrespectful to the military,
right?
To any military family, what he said, and what he said was, this is really loud, his little bodyguards could hear it, and did your son always have balls the size of cue balls? Okay. Now, what I felt like saying, and I didn't do this because I'm a gentleman, I felt like saying, has your brain always been as small as some other part of your anatomy? But I didn't.
That would have been a great line.
Instead, what went through my mind was, this guy's a clown.
Yeah.
And, he was acting like he was drunk or something. And I said, he's number two. If something happens to number one, he's the head of the most powerful country in the world, and we're in trouble. Well, guess what? We got an election in 2.5 weeks, basically. Mm-hmm. And his mind 8 years later sure hasn't gotten any better. It acts like he's senile now. It's even smaller than it was then. And our country, quite frankly, if it would have been in trouble 8 years ago, if he had to take over for number one, we're really going to be in trouble now.
Yeah, you're right. Charles, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You have been an incredible force and inspiration in my life. And you've also been a force and an inspiration, I believe, for anyone who has taken the time to listen to you, to listen to your insight, and to, if you will, thrive off your courage. Your courage is infectious. Your very presence makes anyone and everyone realize that being a patriot, being a citizen, being a father, being a husband, being a citizen is not a spectator sport. That you have to become involved. You know, my mom was a history teacher, and she drilled in me, Charles, a philosophy, a saying. It was, to quote Ruth Janda, quote, "Evil only has power if you become fearful. Always stand strong and take action." End quote. You have stood strong, Charles. You have taken action.
No, I want to correct you. God is strong.
Well, that's true. There is zero doubt about that.
God is strong.
But it's through your faith in God, Charles, that you have been a pillar of strength for our country when many people would have wilted. You stood strong.
Thank you.
And I thank you. Our country is so much better because of that.
Dave, thank you for getting this out, because our country is dependent upon this sort of information going out. The mainstream media, because it's controlled by the people that are not on President Trump's side, but on Biden's side. That shows you where they're coming from. The people that control brainwashing the public aren't going to let this out. I hope that they change their mind, and I hope this does go on the fake media. But thank you, and I encourage you to get this out and everyone else to get this out. It needs to be done in the next 3 weeks.
We will do everything possible, Charles. Everything and anything. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I thank you folks for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail.